to the February edition of The Coffee House, where in the next hour, we'll preview an upstart company's bid to challenge the local cable and phone monopolies. Or is Starpower Communications really a Pepco Trojan horse? Also, parents break the ice about their kids' love of hockey. We'll tune into the contemporary folk swing sounds of the Jesse Paledofsky Group and converse with poet E. Ethelbert Miller, director of Howard University's African American Studies Resources Center. Plus, the art of being a school crossing guard and rap poetry by DJ Renegade.
Hi, and welcome to Coffee House Forum. If you're like me, each month you write out a separate check for your cable subscription, your phone service, and quite possibly another check to an internet service provider. Starpower Communications proposes to offer some of us residential customers in the D.C. area one-stop shopping for all our telecommunications needs, and says it can do so at competitive prices. Starpower was formed by Pepco and RCN Corporation, the Princeton, New Jersey-based company that recently purchased Errol's Internet. Pepco, the electric utility, you say? Yep, Pepco has something that telecom companies prize, a capacity to transmit high-quality data, voice, and video signals over its fiber optic platform. RCN, meanwhile, claims to be the largest internet service provider in the Northeast. As Starpower Communications, Pepco and RCN hope to challenge local cable monopolies and Bell Atlantic's local phone service domination. A good deal for consumers? Karen Giet says it is. She's the Director of Governmental Relations for Starpower. We'll also hear from Rick Elaine, the former chairman of Montgomery County Cable Advisory Committee, and the new Cable Advisory Committee chairman, Michael Strait, recently of Tacoma Park. Hi, and welcome to the Coffee House. Karen, when and if Starpower actually begins to deliver service to Montgomery County, Prince George's County, Northern Virginia, D.C., will consumers who subscribe have to buy the bundled service? That is, telephone, internet, and cable.
Well, let's go first to the word if. It's not going to be an if. We really are going to be providing that service, and it will be provided by the end of the year for the video portion. The telephone service will actually come much sooner. Residents will not have to buy the bundled service. They can buy any individual service, but if they want to get the greatest discount, then the more services they buy, the greater the discount.
Let's think a little bit. It's kind of hard, I think, for people to imagine what this looks like. Right now, we have a telephone, and we connect our telephone jack for internet service, and we have cable that's completely separate. Will Starpower be providing a single appliance, a single console that we do our cable watching, our telephone talking, our faxing, and our internet communications through, or will it look pretty much like our current set of appliances?
Well, right now it looks pretty much like your set of appliances that you already have. What you're talking about is really a few years into the future, I think, for any telecommunications carrier. But Starpower will be using the wiring that's already in the home, so we will connect right up to the Bell Atlantic jack or your cable operator's jack to enter the service into the home.
Okay. Why does the Montgomery County Cable Advisory Committee care about all this, Michael Strait?
Well, first off, because part of what they're proposing to do is to offer a competitive cable television service, and that's what the Cable Communications Advisory Committee was put in place to focus on behalf of the citizens of the county, under the franchise agreement with Montgomery Cable. So we've been very interested to follow the news about Starpower. Representatives from Pepco and from RCN came and made a presentation to us back in October or September, I think, to let us know. So they wanted us to know what they were doing, and are, I presume, interested in having us be supportive. Also, the county officials are looking for every way they can to get citizens involved in a broader spectrum of telecommunication policy issues. And so we're doing it for that reason also.
The technology is a little bit confusing for people, I think. Starpower is talking about a fiber optic platform, but there are other ways to provide data and voice lines into homes. Rick, can you talk a little bit about the difference between copper and fiber optic and coaxial, and what the significance of those differences might be?
Well, the simple way to think about it is bandwidth. It's the difference between a local street, a major thoroughfare, and a super highway. What the fiber optics is just a super highway. A lot of information, a lot of capabilities being able to flow into either a computer or through a phone. They expect that by the year 2010, 90% of the information traveling across networks will be data and 10% voice. And it's just incredible amounts of potential out there in terms of gathering information, tapping into the different networks. And the fiber optics allows all this to happen. At the same time, the fiber optics is being laid all over the place by Bell Atlantic, RCN, and Pepco, and others. The price of the fiber optics is dropping significantly. So what that means is it's even going to be cheaper potentially for even more data and more types of services out there.
And cheaper, I suppose, Karen, you would say, than coaxial cable service, and that's why Starpower, one of the reasons Starpower is able to provide its services at a competitive, perhaps even cheaper rate than Cable TV Montgomery.
Well, I really don't think it has to do with whether you're providing it on coaxial or fiber. When you're talking about the price, what the fiber does, what Rick says, it gives you the large super highway, and as you have a large super highway, it allows you to offer more services. The more services that you can offer over the same piece of equipment, so to speak, the prices are reduced. What happens in the cable community is that because they are basically coaxial cable, they have a very limited, although much broader than the telephone company, they still have a limited highway compared to fiber.
The RCN, which is one of the companies that has formed this consortium along with Pepco, has gotten in the last year very involved in this area and purports to be the first company really to try to do this for residential customers as opposed to business customers. There is a question, I guess, in the marketplace about whether this would really work. And compound that with Forbes magazine's description of the capitalization of RCN as heavily based upon junk bonds suggests to me that perhaps RCN has an extremely heavy debt load. And isn't that a dangerous situation to take into the marketplace and for consumers to rely on?
Well, I'm not a banker, so I can't answer that, and I don't speak for RCN. And Pepco is really not a partner in this. It's Pepco Communications, which is an unregulated subsidiary of Pepco, so we don't want to confuse
I'm glad
them.
you smiled when you said that.
Because you have to keep the family tree straight. I think what you really have to look at, and what Wall Street looks at, and what the banks look at, is what is the experience that the companies are bringing forward, and you don't have to worry as a consumer with the backers behind Starpower. RCN has been in the telephone business, because this is what RCN and Starpower is. Really, it's a CLEC company, a telephone company, not a cable company. They've been in the telephone business for over 100 years. They've been in the long distance business, I believe, for about 15, 20 years. And they also have been in the cable television business. They own cable television systems in the United States and in Mexico. They've also done this type of business overseas. They're not a big company.
They're actually a subsidiary of an Omaha-based company, I gather. Peter Kiewit and Sons is one of the owners when you go up the parent scale there. But the point is that it's experience that counts. Where I think people need to be concerned is when you have companies coming to the forefront who don't have the experience to back them up. Then it really doesn't matter how much capitalization they have, because they won't have the experience to be a success. Okay, and what you're saying is that with this experience and with this capitalization, you're going to be able to provide cheaper rates, perhaps, than Bell Atlantic and Cable TV Montgomery for the various services, and high-speed internet service. Talk a little bit about that.
Well, I can't really tell you much more than what you said, except that we are going to be providing that. We are providing it currently
High-speed internet service means what? Right now, if I run my modem speed typically is around 28.8. How much faster would I be able to?
I'm not a techie, so I can't help you.
You're not a banker either.
I can tell you, I know. You see, I'm in government affairs. I can tell you that it's higher than the 28.8 modem, but other than that, I really can't tell you.
What is it that you're looking for as part of the Cable Advisory Committee in terms of competition for the various telecom providers, particularly cable providers? What is it that you're looking for?
Well, I think the issues of competition are critical. As we found out when Cable TV Montgomery raised their rates, there was really nothing the county could do. There was a lot of talk. Doug Duncan sent out a press release saying he wrote a letter to the FCC. He didn't release his press release saying that we got a penny off our bills. But it's not his fault. That's just the way the regulatory structure is. The localities really under the 96 Telecom Act have lost all power to do anything but negotiate franchises, but in terms of rate regulation, their hands are tied. And so something like Councilmember Michael Subin, in terms of trying to bring in more competition into Montgomery County, is really the only way to lower rates or to bring in better services. Because without competition, there's really nothing else you can do. In fact, in 1999, all regulation for the preferred tier is supposed to go away, even at the FCC, so it'll be unregulated. The only thing that would still be regulated are the local channels, but ESPN, TNN, CNN, all those in the preferred tier become unregulated, so who knows, they're going at 17% a year rate increases. After that, we have a huge deal that just was done with the NFL. We're all going to pay for that. So competition is the best way to keep prices low.
I have a preferred tier, and that is the public, educational, and governmental channels, the PEG channels, of which this program is a creature. And I have to say that we are the poor child of television. And under the franchise agreement with Cable TV Montgomery, there is a requirement that CTM kick in 5% of its gross, I guess, to support these PEG channels. What kind of commitment is Starpower Communications prepared to make in that regard?
Well, I haven't read the franchise agreement here, so I can't comment on whether you're right or wrong on the 5%.
And you're not a lawyer either.
Not a lawyer, but I can tell you, I can tell you that the 5% generally is a percentage of gross revenue, and that's pretty standard. Starpower will also be providing 5% of gross revenue.
Which you do in Somerville, I guess, which RCN does in Somerville.
Right, but that's pretty standard. Unless you have a cable operator who's providing a lower percentage, the standard is pretty much 5% across the country. And then the federal act, the Telecom Act, provides that whatever PEG access channels the incumbent has, we also carry those channels, and we work with the county in developing a PEG support package.
Okay, very quickly, we're running out of time. What are the regulatory hurdles that are still out there?
The regulatory hurdles aren't the same as they are for cable television. The whole idea was to foster competition. We've already been certified by the FCC, so the next step for us really is to negotiate an agreement with the county and the various cities over the rights-of-way.
Okay, it's time we sign off or hang up. Thanks to Karen Giet of Starpower Communications and Rick Lane and Michael Strait of the County Cable Advisory Committee for joining me in the Coffee House. I'm Mark Cohen, and this has been Coffee House Forum. Still to come, ice hockey, a parental view, unique sounds of the Jesse Paledofsky Group, the art of being a school crossing guard, and the poetry of E. Ethelbert Miller. But first, DJ Renegade.
So I do a style of poetry which I call Rapoetry, which is basically like urban tongues depicting what the drums be kicking and syllable knocking, rhythm rhyme rocking, syncopated talking. See, I took the words rap and poetry, then I popped the P's and pronounced it Rapoetry. This is two full lips percussively playing verbs, flipping the script on a rhythmic tip. So I'm gonna beatbox my bebop, then I'm a new jack swing out, cause this is what rap poetry is about. It's about ideas combining in line to rhyme, intertwining, redefining, dribbling the thought, break down into sonic, electronic phonics, leaving you in a condition that's chronic. Every phrase, skiddity scratching its own profound sound. I'm a hum-diddy-dum like licks from a drum. But let me syncopate so y'all can relate. While I tick, you will talk when you flick as you flock to the click of my clock in the nick as I knock on the door of a rhyme and rickety rag time to work funky phonics from the root of the tonic. Squeeze some spoken word from fat minor thirds, then rhetorically flip on a flatted fifth, kicking rap poetry. My funky hip hop, pick, poetry, 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 poetry.
Oh, here we go. Stand by. Hi, and welcome to Body and Soul. Ice hockey. Yes, I know it's hard to believe. We don't even have winter around here anymore. Plus, you have to wake up at 4 in the morning just to drive your kids to practice. And then there's the whole question of watching your kid get slam-banged into the boards. And the season goes on forever, 50, 60 games, practically as many as the pros. But many kids in balmy Montgomery County can't get enough of ice hockey, and neither can their parents. Here with us to explain this very strange phenomena are a rational, peace-loving mom and a pretty reasonable dad, Elaine Anderson and Mark Ginsberg. Hi, guys. Hi. I have to confess to having a little vested interest in inviting you here because my 7-year-old, Gregory, has just taken up ice skating, and already he's talking about hockey. So I'm wondering, what do I have in store as a prospective hockey dad? I mean, what is this? All these stories I hear, 4 in the morning.
Well, a lot of excitement on the one hand, but also a lot of hard work, and it takes a big commitment to play this sport that is a complicated game.
It really is true that some kids get up at 4 to get out there at 5 o'clock on the ice.
Yes, that is true.
That's really true. This is
or maybe 4:30.
Oh, good. That relieves me a lot.
The good news is that as ice hockey is becoming more popular, and we've seen more rinks built in this area in the last 5 to 10 years, that there's more ice time for everybody. And so maybe we don't have to get up quite at 4, but maybe 6 or 6:30 or 7, which makes the more.
That's been the big change as the interest in ice hockey has increased in Montgomery County. So too has the accessibility and the opportunity for kids to play. So when our kids started playing, our oldest has been playing now about 7 years, he literally was on the ice at 5:45 almost every Sunday. And now that's pretty unusual.
Yeah, I read this Peter Franchot quote about out at Wheaton, early in the morning, the fog coming over which is an outdoor rink.
It's surreal.
Right, surreal, right. You couldn't see from one end to the other.
That's right.
And of course, Gregory's been going to this new rink, the name of which escapes me right
in
the studios here.
The Arc Rink, I think it's called. That's the newest one.
Mm-hmm. So, which is now the home rink of the Montgomery County Hockey Association.
Yeah, Montgomery Youth Hockey, which now primarily is playing out of the Rockville rink, but still the club has ice at Wheaton and at Cabin John and a rink in Laurel and a rink up in Severna Park. And in previous years, we've had ice in Frederick and actually north of Baltimore, about 60 miles from Montgomery County.
Wow.
So there's been, not only the times have they been difficult, but so the driving has been a lot too.
I know, talking to sometimes, you're talking about games in Delaware, games in Philadelphia.
Sounds crazy.
Yes, it does.
That's right.
That was the point I was trying to get around to.
Why are we doing this?
Yes, as someone who practices in the understanding of the human psyche, what motivates you to do this?
Well, I think probably what motivates our children is, aside from just loving skating and the fastness of the game, and because it does take a big time commitment. You're developing the skills of skating, but then to develop the skills of the game of hockey, you really have to make a pretty big commitment to put it all together. And so I think probably for them, the other thing that happens is they develop a real friendship with a lot of the kids who they are playing with that carries with them for a number of years.
You know, historically, the teams around here played a lot of their games in Philadelphia and New Jersey and even more north than that, but that's becoming, although still reasonably common, less common because there are more teams down here and more kids playing, so the need to travel that far to have games is becoming less.
Well, that's an interesting point that you make, Elaine, though, because with other sports, it's usually 10 games and you're out.
Right.
I mean, this is really, as you say, as you bond here, this is a family when you play 50 games and you travel all over the place.
And not just the kids, the families.
The families do as well.
Become very close.
Well,
and I was going to say, and I think one of the things that also makes it unique maybe from some other sport like soccer, where one can get dressed for the game much more quickly.
Yes, right. I was going to get to this is the reassuring part, I know, for many parents who hear about getting knocked around. Show us some of your props here. This is, I guess
these are the goalie pads, right? We have 2 children playing, and our younger son plays goalie, and so these are the pads that actually go on his legs.
So these are these really do.
Yes.
They look like a serious protection.
Yes, this is serious protection. And all of the children are required to wear helmets, but even beyond, or in addition to just the helmet, is the face guard. And so all of them are wearing
not just the goalies.
No,
the forwards,
that's right.
the
Everybody
defenders,
who plays,
everybody.
yes. And a mouthpiece is also required. And they actually, when the games start, because they're all referees for all the games, they actually are checking to make sure everybody has this equipment. And I think if sometimes if they don't, they'll send them off the ice to get it on.
Yeah.
So our kids have all their teeth.
Yes, they still do, right.
Exactly.
No,
I think most children these days play hockey.
I grew up in Michigan, and they did a thing of Gordie Howe once, who was, there wasn't an inch left on his face that hadn't been scarred up, and I forget if he had any of his real teeth left.
Well, what's pretty amazing with hockey today, the equipment has become so sophisticated that it's pretty rare for a youngster to be injured seriously. They get bumped and scraped and occasionally be, bruised a little bit, but that's actually not that common either, but it turns out statistically to be quite safe.
I did a little personal investigation back at the rink, which I think if we've got the video here, we can roll it out, which will show. Well, this is as the video comes up here. I think these are teenagers, young teenagers. They were slam banging a little bit, but it didn't look like anybody was in serious danger out there any more than.
The level of contact increases as the kids' age increases.
But there are some rules for the younger kids.
Right.
There's no checking.
No checking until they're 12 or 13.
Right, and. I don't see this video sliding up here, so we may have to forego that. But or maybe it'll come up. But meanwhile, we'll go on to here it comes. All right. So, well, Andrew, your own son had a little injury, right? Or was that a hockey injury?
Yeah, it was a hockey injury. Last year it was a pretty freak injury. He was hit by a puck, but he was hit in a way that the puck somehow got under one of his knee pads and hit him in his leg on his knee. And it was really a freak injury, not something that people had seen before. So,
and he recovered reasonably quickly.
Yeah, he recovered. It's taken a bit of time, but he missed a couple of weeks of skating, but thankfully he's fine.
Yeah. But these kids.
Not sure what
they look like, well, actually they look like real hockey players for one thing.
12 or 13.
Yeah, and they're, as I said, they're knocking each other around. There's a good hit. Yeah, but
underneath those shirts, though,
there's padding out. There's padding on there.
Right. They were all required to wear neck guards,
and elbow pads, and arm pads, and leg pads, and they're pretty well protected. But it's still a physical game. There's no two ways about it. Hockey is a physical sport.
And there's a tremendous amount of stamina, it seems to me, as I watch this.
It takes a terrific amount of aerobic energy, and one of the things that's been great about it is the kids turn out to become in just great shape, and they really learn a lot about themselves and it's really done good things for our kids in
So
that way.
this rink is one place where you could call if you're trying to hook in, but it's in Rockville. It's called what, ARC?
Yeah, probably the place to call would be Montgomery Youth Hockey, which is
there a phone number in the book?
organization. It's in the book. It's a nonprofit youth sports organization here in Montgomery County, and they sponsor instructional clinics for kids who just want to really learn and get the feel of the game, and then teams at different levels, from very early competitive levels to the teams that travel all over the place. And not all the teams, not all the kids who play hockey play at the level that our kids do, where they travel quite a bit and play at a high level. There's also lots of recreational
There's a
teams.
recreational, so you can just get involved, and it's more like
I think that's important for people to realize, that the amount of time that our children spend, not all children spend that much time with their hockey, nor do they have to, that there really are these different levels in terms of commitment and numbers of games. You mentioned 60 games, but it's also possible to maybe only have 10 games per season.
This reassures me.
Right. So you don't have to commit every weekend now.
Okay, all right. And do these things get recycled, or do you end up having a pretty fair investment in equipment?
That's a good question.
That's a good question.
Yes to both of those questions.
Okay.
The equipment is fairly expensive, but yes, it is recycled in the sense that Montgomery Youth Hockey has a equipment exchange and sale every year, so people who have equipment their children are outgrowing can sell that hockey. So that's one way that people can get good equipment at a cheaper rate.
Yeah, I think these have gone through probably 2 or 3 kids in 4 or 5 years.
The league itself actually
right.
provides these for the goalies, and there are even some of the stores in the county that actually
So
have
used equipment also.
used equipment too.
But it is a sizable investment, and one of the things I'd recommend for parents is not to skimp on equipment, but to be sure that if you buy new or used, that you buy high-quality equipment.
Right.
It's really talking about protecting your child. Even if it's a non-aggressive playing of hockey, you can still fall on the ice, and you want to be well protected if you do.
Well, we have to get out of here, but it's Montgomery
Youth Hockey.
Look it up in the phone
Look it up
book.
in the phone book and give them a call. They have an answering machine or answering service, and I'm sure they'll be happy to send information about the club and the league.
All right. Thank you for being here. Until next time, I'm Howard Cohn.
Still ahead, the school crossing guard dance, poet E. Ethelbert Miller, and music by the Jesse Paledofsky Group.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Starlight, breeze blowing from the bay, juicy mango, sweet calypso, tickle my blues away. Uncle Benny, draft dodger, he real estate, big cheese. TV in the Congress, scream paranoia, we just live as we please. We're not afraid, sure as hell ain't high. When we marvel in the moonlight, we know in paradise. My buddy Chico, he called me crazy. I trade my Mercedes away for an ice cream maker, an old bazooki, and 2,000 pounds of clay. We played gin rummy, read trash novels, and satellite dish to the moon. No health insurance, but honey's a potter. I sit around making up tunes, and we're not afraid, and we sure ain't high. When we mambo in the moonlight, we know it's paradise. I'm a weaver, dreams and business. Honey works as a clown. I go market, sell rutabaga, drink Java till my eyes turn brown. No casino, no high rises, acres and acres of sand. Uncle Benny, he sell houses, price for the working man. And we are all amazed, and we still ain't high. When we mambo in the moonlight, we know it's paradise. So if you're weary of the gold digging, it ends up a flash in a pan. For satisfaction, call Uncle Benny at 1-800-GO-GET. For satisfaction, call Uncle Benny at 1-800-GO-GET.
Well, Jesse, welcome to the musical traditions segment of Tacoma Coffee House.
It's great to be here.
Man, last time I heard you, you were a singer-songwriter with guitar. Don't embarrass me with how long it's been, but what's changed here? What's going on?
Well, I've taken music a lot more seriously in the last few years, and it's been a lot of fun. It's been great to meet these wonderful musicians. Robin and I started playing about 7 years ago in a group, and she introduced me to Jerry, and he's a wonderful percussionist, and Richard and I have been playing for a little while now.
This is a good segue to introduce the band without saying, and now let's introduce the band. So how long has this configuration been?
This one is more recent. Robin and I have been together for a few years, and the other folks have been more recent in the last few months, actually.
Wow. Is this all your material?
Yes, I'm going to be playing all songs that I've written.
So we'll call this, what would we call this, folk with a blues tinge?
I'm looking for somebody to give me something to, something really zappy, happy. So Dave, you're the guy.
Well, we don't want to put folk and blues together and get flues, or bloke. So we'll work on it.
Yeah, we need to work on that.
All right. What was that last tune called?
That was called Paradise.
Okay.
Wrote it when I was in Turkey, actually. I was just dreaming dreams of being far away and sort of taking off to a paradise island.
Okay. What are you going to do for us next?
This is called So I Can Feel Your Rivers Wash Me Down.
Okay, a gospel tune?
No.
No?
No, this is
a bathing tune.
This is a song of addictive love, actually, if I might say so.
Okay.
That's what it is.
Take it away, thanks.
1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. I thought that when I met you, could lock the past behind me in a little box, drop it in the starving sea. Had everything we needed. The sparks that flew between us kept us warm, and I never grew hungry. Is it really the spring thaw, or just a young fool's dream? And
Where do the catfish hide in the winter time? Riding clear from Kentucky on the trail of a moonbeam, just so I can feel your rivers wash me down, so I can feel your rivers wash me down. The darkness I had always known enfolded me just like a wound. Sunshine cowed me like a beast of prey. Funny how I grew to crave the very thing kept me a slave until the time you shone your light my way. Is it really the spring thaw, or just a young fool's dream? And where do the catfish hide in the winter time? Riding clear from Kentucky on the trail of a moonbeam, just so I can feel your rivers wash me down, so I can feel your rivers, I can feel your rivers, so I can feel your rivers wash me down. Na 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 na.
I feel so clean. Folk fusion. You know, actually, I'm hearing a jazz sound there, I think, with Robin's flute and the bass.
I think some Muscatella said something that reminded her a little bit of a Van Morrison kind of thing.
Where do you guys usually play? What sort of venues work best for you?
Well,
you can plug certain places, but just give people an idea of what works.
We're doing some things on the coffee house scene. Going to be doing something in January with Magpie, and we're doing something up in Philadelphia, up at a place called Pendle Hill, and we're doing
starting to get out of town a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit.
What do you think? Is there an album, a CD on the horizon?
Yes, we really want to do that, and got a 5-song tape out now that we did last spring, but a CD, we'd definitely love to do that.
Yeah. I know it would be wonderful if this style could catch on, because you have a little bit of world beat happening with the drums, and then you have some jazz and certainly a blues influence. It could be the cutting edge here. So what do you want to take us out with?
We're going to do a song called Cruising on the Beltway.
Okay.
Washington Experience.
Right. And you're going to switch the keyboard?
I'm going to switch to the keyboard for this one.
Okay. Take it away.
shoulder and cutscene. If I own a shotgun, I commit a mortal sin.
Ethelbert Miller joins Lisa Page for Writer's Block, but first, the art of daily life. Ethelbert Miller joins Lisa Page for Writer's Block, but first, the art of daily life.
Writer Alex Haley was once asked by a student in a creative writing class what to write about. The process of writing was daunting, that cold first moment, staring at the naked page. Haley's advice was generous. He told the student to find a focus. Specifically, he said, find something you love and praise it. My guest this edition has done that in spades. E. Ethelbert Miller loves language, and his book, First Light, New and Selected Poems, reflects this. But Ethelbert Miller has other roles that reveal this as well. He is director of the African American Studies Resources Center at Howard University. He is founder and organizer of the Ascension Reading Series, and he is the co-owner of Vertigo Books in DuPont Circle. His commitment to literature and the community at large go hand in hand. Welcome to the Coffee House.
Oh, thank you for inviting me.
Ethelbert, First Light, how did you come up with this collection of poetry? What was the genesis?
Well, this is, I would like to say, my big collection of work, poems I was writing in the late 60s, early 70s, all combined into one publication. So it was something which I had to go back to a lot of old poems, pick out what I wanted to, keep in front of my public, my audience. And I feel that this is a foundation for me. This is work that captures the 70s, the 80s. Some of it's personal, some of it's political.
Well, you have the beginning is Panama, and could you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, Panama, those are the personal poems because Panama is the home of where my father was born. He came to the U.S. when he was a small boy, and I talk about him leaving Panama where he was speaking Spanish, forgetting the language and coming here to the U.S. And I think that's a very important thing that happens to many people who make this transition, this journey from one land to another.
Yes.
And so I use that as the beginning for my own discovery of language.
And you've got several other sections in the book, but you also have a section on El Salvador?
Right. During the 1970s and early 80s, my life was changed by many friends who I met who were battling some of the problems in their countries, such as Nicaragua, Chile. People were fighting the Somoza regime in Nicaragua, Pinochet in Chile. And this was something in which I started out as an African-American writer, concerned with issues within my own community. But the mere fact that I was seen as a writer, various members of other communities who are organizing cultural programs in support of various causes would say, hey, Ethelbert, we want you to come, this evening and read some poems. And so I would go to these cultural programs, and I realized after about 2 or 3 meetings that if I was going to communicate with a group of people who are all from El Salvador or Nicaragua, I needed to have some work that at least related to their experience.
Yes.
So I listened to their stories, and then I created my poems based on what I heard.
And you also have a section on the Bronx, is it?
I grew up in the Bronx.
In the Bronx.
Yeah, we don't have to talk about that.
No, we don't have to.
The Bronx speaks for itself.
But it's interesting to me how you use place, that it's Panama, Salvador, the Bronx. It's geography, and it's the politics around geography.
And also when we think sometimes of language, we can sometimes think of language as geography. Language takes us to certain places, throughout with our imagination. These are areas in which I label in such a way to, as I was saying, putting this collection in, giving it shape, category. So I use places to be consistent.
And it works very nicely. And certain images that you have, too, including the ones I will go to the Bronx, that I found quite startling. And you said actually came out of experience. There's some children playing stickball.
Oh, stickball. Stickball was that's where you had your little spoiled beans, you could play in the street, things of that sort. But, the South Bronx is known for a place that, one time it was like Fort Apache, things of that sort. It was a violent community. I was fortunate, to have parents who kept me, somewhat protected from that environment. So I was not permitted to run the streets. But the violence, creeps in. You would see it in terms of in the playgrounds, you see it in the parks, and many people didn't survive, the South Bronx.
And that particular poem, you talk about seeing children play. They're not
St. Mary's Park. St. Mary's Park. I remember, walking down the street and here were a group of young guys, hitting each other upside the head with bats. I mean, that's real.
That's really. You also, it's interesting how you jump between points of view, that you very clearly go from what seem to be personal poems about yourself, your own family, your own life, to perspectives of Malcolm X or...
I mean, that's a process. You know, when I started writing in the late 60s, I pretty much was writing about those things that were taking place outside. You know, many of us who were part of the Black Arts movement were concerned about using language, using our poetry to shape our community, to put certain images in front of our community. So we were concerned about, you know, quote, making the revolution. As we moved into the 1970s, what we saw many writers using Nikki Giovanni or even Hakeem Anabuti, many writers began to take this inward journey. You know, they realized that before they could change their society, they had to look at themselves. They had to change themselves. So the personal politics began to emerge. We have the women's movement to thank, and many women writers, you know, who come to prominence in the 70s for this. And so I learned from those two groups. And so what I try to do in my work is to try to bring together political issues with personal ones. Sometimes I explore things which are outside of my experience, using like sometimes a female persona to examine certain issues which I think should be talked about, should be discussed.
Well, you are going to read a poem for us, right?
I'll read this poem. Right. I'll read this poem, which is Rebecca. I wrote this several years ago in Seattle, Washington. I wrote this poem maybe in about 5 minutes. When I wrote this poem, I did not know anyone who had been battling breast cancer. But since then, the number of people who I have spoken to after readings who said, okay, this poem, you know, is something I can relate to. I really have been educated about this issue. Rebecca. Will I hate mirrors? Will I hate reflections? Will I hate to dress? Will I hate to undress? Jim, my husband tells me it won't matter if I have one or two or one, it doesn't matter, he says, but it does. I know it does. This is my body. This is not South Africa or Nicaragua. This is my body losing a war against cancer. And there are no demonstrators outside the hospital to scream stop. There's only Jim, sitting in the lobby, wondering what to say the next time we love, and his hands move towards my one surviving breast. How do we convince ourselves it doesn't matter? How do I embrace my own nakedness now that it is no longer complete?
Thank you. And that's a very good example of what First Light is, it seems to me. I mean, the title of First Light goes very well with the collection in the terms of shedding light, metaphorically and literally. So it's really, thank you.
Thank you.
Really, you also have a section in there, you have some music.
Well, music is always important, you know, in terms of poetry. You try to listen to the rhythms. Many of our writers have been influenced by blues, by jazz. You know, we have writers like Langston Hughes to thank for this. We have like many of the beat writers who perform, you know, to jazz composition. So this is very important, and I think that I'm no exception in terms of, you know, liking the music and trying to incorporate it into my work.
Yes, yes. And we just have a few more minutes, but what are you doing? What's next after this?
Well, I continue breathing. That's one of the key things. But, you know, I try to stay busy, not only with my own work, but, you know, I define myself as a literary activist. And I think when we look around our society, there are many things for us to do. So whether it's saving our libraries and making sure they have a budget for acquisitions, or whether promoting bookstores in our community, or just encouraging people to read, I think all of us who are writers and who are literary activists have a full agenda.
Well, you certainly keep your hands full with all that you're involved in. And could you say a little bit about the Ascension reading series?
Well, the Ascension Poetry Reading Series has been around since 1974. You know, I started that series because I was committed to help young writers, you know, have an outlet, you know, a place where in the city where they could read. And I saw where many writers were having difficulty getting published. So I felt that, you know, you could still reach your audience, you know, through the spoken word if you had a place to read. And And so that's what I try to do. One of the beautiful things about my series is that a lot of networking takes place. A reading is not just a place where you go and stand in front of an audience and read a poem. A reading is where you get to know people and share information. I look at how a number of my friends have gotten married. They've met their wives and husbands at some of these readings. So we know there's a little more than poetry being read and recited.
And I can see you networking there, too.
Well, I just try to give a blessing here and there.
Well, that's great. It's
Okay,
really,
thank you.
it's really a pleasure having you on the show.
Thank you for inviting me.
And down the road, I hope that we see you again, especially
Okay,
when this next collection comes out.
All right.
So, and you also, very quickly now, because we're at, but you've also talked about writing some memoir type.
Right, I'm working on a new collection, or actually a collection called Fathering Words, which will go back and talk about my father, about my brother, and in such a way that I think it'll be interesting in terms of, I feel the power of language is that I can recreate my father and my brother's life.
That's great, that's great. Thanks. Thanks to E. Ethelbert Miller for joining us in the Coffee House. I'm Lisa Page, and this has been Writer's Block.
That's it for the February edition. See you next month in the Tacoma Coffee House.